Stocks, bonds, ETFs, straight out of downtown Chicago. This is Zacks Market Edge.
Welcome to Zacks Market Edge, the podcast about investing in your life. I'm your host, Tracy Brynick, and this week I'm joined by Zacks stock strategist Ethan Feller to talk about GenZ. What are their favorite stocks? What's going on with them as investors? And I invited Ethan on because he's of the younger cohort here at Zacks, and I thought he might be able to give us some insight into what he and his friends are buying right now. I used to do this show quite a bit on the podcast. I used to do both GenZ's and the millennials, but I haven't done a Gen Z in a number of years. And I think the very first podcast I ever did on the Gen Z's was when the oldest of them started to come out of college. They were like 21, 22, and we had some Gen Z interns back in Zacks' office back in the day. And now I realize that the Gen Z's are the oldest. Those same ones I interviewed back in the day are now 27, 28, right? Maybe even 29, I guess. And so they're out there in the workforce. They're ready and willing to be investors in the stock market. And they're a generation that has basically grown up with the on the phone apps. I used to interview millennials for this podcast about do they use Robinhood and things like that, because it was a new app back in the day, but now it's not. And so we have a whole generation of people growing up with the ease of investing on your phone. And they certainly do make it easy now, not just Robinhood, but all of the financial apps have, phone apps now, even Zacks. We have our own as well. And so it's all at the touch of the tip of the fingers there to be investors. So welcome, Ethan. Welcome. And I appreciate you coming on to give us your insights.
Yeah. Hey, Tracy. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be a video podcast for those of you listening. You can get the video portion of it where we're just going to show some stock charts and some of my favorite price and consensus charts off Zacks.com. So if you want to actually see the charts, go to our YouTube channel. You can find it there at Zacks.com/YouTube if you want to find it, or just put Zacks Investment Research into the search bar and you'll find our YouTube channel. And, to make it easier, just subscribe over there, because then you don't have to worry about it and you'll get all of our videos over there. Okay, so now that we got that little part out of the way, I was interested and intrigued by what Gen Z is buying now, because I have noticed that some of the trends have changed from the millennials to the Gen Z's. And we now have this kind of completely new area that's breaking out with AI. And that kind of reminds me a lot of when the internet jumped on the scene for Gen X investors. I know I'm a Gen Xer, and many of us were buying, all the .coms or like new companies like Yahoo in the late 1990s. And, companies that weren't explicitly tech stocks like an Amazon, those all came on the scene right then. So where do we kind of stand with Gen Z? And I was going to start in another area, but I do want to start with the AI, because I feel like that's so dominant theme right now that nobody can escape it. So, and I know a lot of Gen Zers are using the generative AI with like ChatGPT. And I know a lot of college students who are using it to generate, their college papers and things like that right now. So I feel like this generation is maybe the best positioned to understand what AI is and what the possibilities are.
Yeah, Tracy, I think that's a great point. I mean, like you look at like little kids, like with an iPad, they're like 8 or 9 years old. They know all the tricks, so kids are always going to be a quick study, and, they're internet natives. So I think messing around with new internet tools, it all just quickly makes sense to them.
Okay, so if if you're the Gen Zer and you do want to buy and invest in stocks that are in the AI space, obviously, I have heard some Gen Zers ask me about Microsoft because it has the big investment in OpenAI. It's got, Bing and various other, generative AI type of things going on. But this company was one of the it stocks for the Gen Xers in the 1990s with the internet. I'm putting up a chart right now that shows the price to consensus chart for Microsoft. It is trading near its all-time highs once again. So someone's buying it. I don't know if that's Gen Z buying it here or not. And then you can see the growth in the earnings there that's expected. It has come down from 2022 back then. You can see the analysts were super bullish. That came down a bit, but it's starting to trend higher again, both for 2024 and 2025. Microsoft up just 10.7% year to date. It is near those highs, like I mentioned, but it's kind of like a slow grinder stock recently. I consider Microsoft to be kind of like old technology, but do Gen Z, do you think, do they consider this to be like one of the in AI stocks?
Well, I mean, you're talking AI, ChatGPT. I mean, that was huge last year, and they obviously are majority owner in OpenAI. So, it's definitely going to be one of the main ones you go to. And of course, Microsoft's got a whole suite of products, software, and, anyone in any workforce, using computers is going to be using Microsoft products as well. I've actually been meaning to try out the new. They have a 365 assistant with AI. I've been meaning to try that actually, but I'm sure anyone who's comfortable using it, I'm sure they're enjoying it. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's funny that you say you were trading it back in '99, but yeah, Microsoft just stays relevant. I mean, it's such a great company. It's really hard to go wrong going with Microsoft. Maybe I know it's a little bit above its long-term median valuation, forward earnings, but they're just ahead of the trend. Hard to ignore it.
Yeah. Now, in full disclosure, I do own some Microsoft shares, and I'm feeling kind of bullish. And even, now that I'm looking at this price to consensus chart, and I did add a little bit to my position in early April 2024.
Yeah, you can see the earnings revision trend just starting to perk up again.
Yeah. That would be like right here where it's starting the estimates are starting to rise a bit here. Mm-hmm. What about the other areas of AI? Obviously, the chips are the huge area, and the leader there is Nvidia. Nvidia is surprisingly an old technology company too. It's not as old as Microsoft, but it is a company of the 1990s, and then didn't go IPO, and I think until like 1999 is when it went. So right at the end of the internet boom time. But I put up the chart of Nvidia. We all know the story, the surge in the shares as those earnings and the sales, skyrocket. Sales, I think, have doubled in the last year. Nvidia's off of its highs a little bit.
Sales have quadrupled.
Oh, it's quadrupled now? Quadrupled. Yeah, I can't even keep up.
I know. Yeah.
And with a company this size, I feel like we may never see something like this happen again with a massive company like this. It's not normal. So what are younger people thinking about Nvidia? It's always kind of been a younger person's stock because of its importance in gaming as well. So are they into this? Did they feel like they might have missed this? Are they still willing to buy it here near the highs?
Yeah, I think they're still interested. And like you said, they were big on the gaming GPUs, and kids love building gaming, gaming rigs or gaming setups. So they were familiar with the name. So, I mean, you're talking AI, you're talking Nvidia. So yeah, they're still interested, and I too, I'm bullish. You can see the price action in the chart you have up there. the second half of 2023, we saw Nvidia trading sideways kind of for a while. Everyone's like, oh, it's overpriced. It's going to roll over. It's the end of this trend. And then look, it just practically doubled from there starting the new year. And, you're starting to see another consolidation. And Nvidia has been trading sideways for the better part of a month now. And, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll be another month, another 2 months of trading sideways. But I think it's pretty conducive action. And, as much as people say, oh, it's gone up so much, it still has a pretty reasonable valuation.
Right.
Considering that.
I feel like that too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think 35 times forward earnings or something like that. And they're projecting earnings to grow 30% annually. They got like 80% margins on revenues that are growing, doubling every year. So just because the stock went up doesn't mean it's expensive. And I think Nvidia has been a perfect lesson in that. And fortunately for young investors, they don't have as much experience and they're not going to be scared out of something. Oh, it went up so much. Although we've been through these kind of crazy cycles since 2020, we've seen practically a whole economic cycle. But yeah, I think they like Nvidia.
I feel like a lot of generations have like a generational stock that everybody owns for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you could foresee Nvidia being that stock for Gen Z's.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it really could be.
I can't think of, anything else. I feel like Apple was the stock and maybe even Meta Platforms for the millennials. And Gen X, like I mentioned, we had Microsoft or even Amazon at that time. But
that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, it does feel like Nvidia is the leader in AI for now, and that Gen Z is like right in the middle of it with this particular company.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. And I know CEO Jensen Huang has done a couple of big speeches lately, and people love him. So, I mean, it's great for the brand.
Right. It's good to have those visionary CEOs when it's a stock that is like a generational stock.
Totally.
So, So
it's fun. You're right. It just, you say that it's like Microsoft, internet. Then we had Apple, mobile, Facebook, social media. You had EVs, you got Tesla. Now we have AI,
Right.
Nvidia.
And
it's like
this is the
thematic.
Yeah. Okay. I guess getting a little bit out of tech, Reddit just went IPO. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how much is Gen Z. This is an old one. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure, do they care about
I think
Reddit?
They do. Yeah, they do. I mean, Gen Z is on Reddit. I mean, Reddit is still a huge website. I mean, I was looking today, it has 250 million weekly average users, a billion monthly. So, I mean, it is a huge website, but less promising as a business and as a stock. Just looking into it. I know people were interested. I had lots of people were talking about it, the IPO. I don't think any of them were looking at the numbers going into the IPO because they're just not encouraging. So they're definitely talking about it, but I think it's an opportunity, I mean, in my opinion, to learn about, like, it's exciting. Everyone knows Reddit. It's going public. We don't have any of the numbers on the Zacks website.
I'm scrolling down for those of you listening on Zacks.com, and we don't have any numbers yet because they just went IPO, so the numbers aren't in.
But it just seems like they really have trouble monetizing the platform. I mean, 1 billion monthly users, and their annual profit or their annual revenue is 800 million in 2023. I mean, Meta probably brings that in every few days.
Right. Yeah. I was just looking at YouTube the other day, and they have 2.7 billion worldwide users now on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But last year in 2023, their revenue was 31 billion.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of the difference on the advertising side, right?
I think it maybe just kind of like that forum kind of platform is like old school almost, and it's very user friendly. But I don't think it's great for ads. I think people really don't like seeing ads on it. So it's a great community, but I think as it stands now, not a great investment.
Okay. What about the hot restaurants? Again, there are restaurants kind of associated with different generations that like come IPO, they become real hot. Everybody goes to them. They all complain about the prices. But we've had a couple recently that are newer that have gone IPO. One of those is Sweet Green, ticker S as in Sam, G as in George. And that went IPO in 2021 when we had the kind of IPO craze that was going on during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then the stock was just down, down, down. But it's had a nice rally here in 2024. I got the chart up and it's up 88.3% year to date. It is off the recent highs, however, and it's still down almost 60% from its IPO. But you can see on the price to consensus chart here that the earnings are not looking terrible, but they are still negative. It is still taking a loss there. And so they, haven't figured out a way to path to profitability yet. They're mostly focusing on expansion right now. Yeah. But Sweet Green seems to be real popular with college students, younger people in offices who want something a little bit healthier. It is kind of the salad idea. But what do you think about Sweet Green for Gen Z investors?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. Going back to like thematic stocks, right? We had Chipotle, which, it's massive. It's done so well as a stock. And Sweet Green, I think, is a pretty good analog. I remember when it first came out, when it first IPO'd, I was like, this is really expensive, no profits. But after looking at it again, like you said, it's still not profitable, but they got really nice growth. Sales are expected to grow, I think, almost 20% annually. And it's still, and definitely they got the branding spot on, and it's always full of young kids. And I think it is a cool opportunity, and it brings up just a general point about investing as a younger person, is that you have such a long timeline. It's such a huge time frame to invest that you can weather a lot more volatility maybe than someone who is closer to retirement or is going to start spending their investment money sooner. So, there's something called like a coffee can investment portfolio where, you throw a little bit of money in and you kind of forget about it, maybe hold it for a long time. I think Sweet Green could be something interesting like that. It's not, I think it's under $10 billion market cap. So it's only a fraction the size of something like Chipotle. And I think there is big potential for it. People love it. And if they can get the economics right, it could, people are loving it this year. Like you said, almost 100% year to date. So
yeah,
I think
it got maybe just a little oversold there earlier in the year, maybe.
Okay. We got some weakness in the market now, and Sweet Green's following that. But if things hold up, and could be a dip opportunity here.
Are there any other hot restaurant stocks we should be aware of that younger people are all into? There may not be.
Well, I think another one, Wingstop, we had mentioned. That one is a really, really strong, wing. Really, really, really strong price action. I think it's getting pretty expensive. 100 times earnings, over 10 times sales. But the leading stocks, they lead, and people love Wingstop. I see more and more ads, and they got great marketing. And
they do.
And you can see it's got a little consolidation there in the price action.
Yeah.
Bull flag.
Yeah, I put up the price and consensus chart, and you can see that nice earnings growth expected both for this year and next year. And this is going with, increase in costs that a lot of these restaurants are facing, not only labor costs, but food costs. Basically, everything is hitting them right now. And so it's still impressive that they can see this kind of earnings growth right now. So, and
this one was on the, excuse me, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention, you can look back a couple of years because Wingstop did pretty good during the pandemic when everybody was locked in. They were giving away like free delivery. I know I ordered it to try it when they were doing free delivery. And it's, look at the growth in just the last 4 years, even on the earnings side. So it's impressive.
Yeah, that one was sitting on the top of the Zacks rank for a while.
Yes.
Remember, I think third quarter or fourth quarter last year looking at it, and it's just rocketed higher since then.
I'm looking at it right now, and it is a Zacks number 2 buy still. So still holding on to that nice Zacks rank as well, still right now. All right. So switching out of the restaurants, I did want to talk about like clean energy, not oil. I know Gen Z doesn't care about, the oil side of things, and millennials didn't either, understandably so. They're out there, driving Teslas or hybrid cars and all of that. So you wanted to talk about one of the energy stocks on the clean energy side. It's one I'm not that familiar with, Constellation Electricity. Is that right? Or energy?
CEG, Constellation Energy Corp.
Yeah. What makes it so interesting? Why would a Gen Z want to own Constellation here? It seems to me when I was just kind of looking at it like, oh, this is some boring utility company. But then looking at this chart that I just pulled up, that doesn't look too boring. So what is it about it that is appealing?
Yeah. So Gen Z is laser focused on climate change, alternative energy. I mean, in terms of oil, I would say not that they're not interested, but they really don't like it. I have no opinion on that, but they are, not fans, and they are seeking alternatives. So yeah, I think nuclear energy, the trend is really just starting to pick up. It was like the second half of last year. I had friends reaching out. Oh, should I buy? A lot of people were asking, should they buy like uranium stocks, which is, of course, the material used to produce nuclear energy. And I had seen booms and busts kind of over the last few years, people getting interested in nuclear and in uranium stocks. But I really think it's picking up. And, the biggest thing that's going to drive a change is policy. And I think policymakers are, becoming interested in nuclear energy again. And, we have wind and solar. We've poured trillions of dollars over the last decade into it. And, they're still kind of finicky. You don't have, under 50% usability. So it's intermittent that you get the energy from them. And nuclear is just a clean, 98% of the time the energy is coming in. So yes, Constellation is the leading nuclear energy provider in the United States. They produce, I think it was 24,000 gigawatts of energy annually, which is more than double the second largest producer of nuclear power in the United States. So they're by far and away the largest producer. And they're producing 10% of the country's electricity and over half of all the clean energy in the country. So they're pretty much dominating the clean energy and nuclear space. They have other energy assets as well. They have wind, they have solar, natural gas, hydro, but they're the leaders in nuclear. And so, yeah, it's on its own. It's a strong company. It's fairly priced, 25 times earnings. It's got good growth. Earnings are growing in the 20s, I think, pretty fast. But more than anything, it has this, alternative energy catalyst, and it's the leading name. If you look at any nuclear ETFs, nuclear energy ETFs, Constellation is the biggest holding. So again, we're harping on these like themes, these big thematic shifts. And if you're thinking about alternative energy, this nuclear one, it's new. I think it's really well positioned. I think that you might see a rush, in the next year or two or a few years, And again, like to my point where you got a long time frame, you can weather the volatility. Yeah, I think Constellation could fit the bill for some.
Okay, I brought up the detailed estimates on Constellation, and you can see 2024 earnings expected to be at 47%. So we got the huge surge this year, but still another 10% for next year, which is respectable considering, it is a utility. And I saw that it also does pay a dividend for those older investors out there who maybe want a little bit of income. It's
I think
not
you'd be
great.
surprised. Young people love dividends. They
Do
love the
they?
idea
Okay.
of a little bit of cash. Everyone's always asking me, "Oh man, this thing's got 3% dividend." I'm like, "What do you care?" But they like it. They like having the dollars come in.
Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
good to know. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I guess I'll have to do a whole podcast on the favorite dividend stocks of GenZ's coming up.
It's like
because
the idea
that's unusual.
You're supplementing your income a little bit, I guess. I mean, who doesn't like the idea of some passive income?
Right. The passive thing. Yeah. And that's good to hear because I've always said, the checks you may get. So say you buy Constellation, I see it's yielding just 0.8%. So you're going to get a pretty small check from them. But, who doesn't like to get something? Like, I don't care if it's $10, right? Like that's still just money coming to you and it will grow over time. I have to go up and look and just see how much they actually pay out. $1.41 is the dividend. So yeah, if you don't have, at least 100 shares, you're not getting that much with this one. But still, it's something, and it is fun to get those little checks in because they do grow bigger. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
This stock is up 60% year to date, and it's trading near its highs. Should people be waiting for a pullback?
I mean, you certainly can. But again, with some of these stocks that we're looking at with, when I think of a younger person's investment portfolio, sure, you got some stuff that's going to mirror the market or maybe that's defensive, but you should have another batch that is stuff you expect to outperform the market. And, you have your more speculative piece of your portfolio. I wouldn't try to do too much timing. You pick these stocks that you think are going to have big returns over the next few years. If the stock goes down 5 or 10 more percent, sure, you get a better entry, but is that going to make a big difference if you're trying to make a few 100% over the next, couple of years or decade or, longer? So I don't think you need to wait. I tend to think leading stocks also continue to lead and sort of make it hard to get into. So no, I mean, I think if nuclear energy is interesting to you, I think just get into it.
Okay. We just briefly mentioned electric vehicles, and you mentioned Tesla, and you were telling me before the podcast that GenZ's might be interested in Tesla's rival in Rivian. That's the ticker RIVN. The shares are down 63% year to date, but all these electric vehicle companies, and including the old school ones that are building electric plus fossil fuel cars, are all struggling right now as, the number of car sales on the EV side has just slowed. So what about Rivian is intriguing right now?
I'm starting to see them everywhere. I see a lot of them on the road, and they're pretty cool looking. I'm a fan of the design. But they have a big partnership with Amazon. They custom designed 10,000. Amazon has 10,000 custom designed Rivian vans with plans to have up to 100,000 by 2030. But most of all, it's cheap. It's really cheap. Obviously, it's gone down a lot, but it's got a $9 billion market cap, and they have about that much in cash. So I know in our analyst meetings, we've talked about electric cars quite a bit, and I know you are not skeptical, and I have the exact same position. It's like there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to get built for this electrical vehicle thing to continue, and we have seen a real slowdown in the sales recently. Tesla's sales have slowed. They've had to cut the price of the car. Tesla stock is down huge. So the idea that we're all going to be driving electric cars in the future is being tested a little bit. But I'm totally open to it. I could be totally wrong about that, and maybe we will be electric cars. And I think Rivian is a cool place to maybe get a really asymmetric opportunity, just because it's so beaten down and it's so cheap, and it's becoming popular. I mean, people like them. I hear people talking about buying them. If talking about electric cars, which ones they want to look at, and I think they're definitely cooler looking than a Tesla. And to the point where we said about charismatic CEOs, whereas I think Musk built up a huge brand and has tons, a cult following, but Gen Z doesn't really like him. They're really not big fans of Elon Musk. He's become a lot more divisive, and whereas that provided a premium to Tesla stock, investing with Elon in the past, maybe that bites him in the butt going forward. I saw this video where there's like this chronic thing of people keying Teslas, and the Teslas have cameras on them too, so you can see it. And it's just, I think because they don't like Elon Musk. So I think Tesla versus Rivian, I think Rivian, you have more upside opportunity.
Okay. I put up the chart of Rivian, the price to consensus chart, and you can see from its 2021 IPO, much like Sweetgreen, the chart, but it hasn't had the rally this year that Sweetgreen has managed to do. And it's still on the decline. So yeah, maybe this is one you keep on your watch list. The earnings are expected to grow. They still will be in the negative. They're not going to be profitable, but you can see some of the estimates being cut here on the price to consensus chart. You can see 2024 starting to decline there, go the wrong way, and even 2025. But this is the reality that the analysts are now seeing out there, that the market is slowing for electric vehicles. So, and that's going to slow down the earnings too.
You just pulled up the detail though. You see the sales, they got great sales growth next year, 50% expected to grow.
Yeah. Yes, which you could see on that price to consensus chart. All the lines are going up one over the other, so you do have the growth, but the analysts
what were the sales right above it? I remember I saw that they were high.
Yeah,
the sales growth.
Let's see. Yeah, for next year, 2025, up 50% on the sales side. I wonder if that will hold, though.
Yeah, true.
We don't know because that's still 2025.
I mean, autos is just a brutal business.
In general, it doesn't matter.
To make money in. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see expected to lose $3.94 this year on the earnings side, but just $1.80 next year. So that is all moving in the right direction, which you just saw on the price of consensus chart. Earnings growth of 19% this year, 54% for next year. But you can see down here on the agreement that the analysts have been cutting in the last 60 days. But this is on the weakness that's now out there on the electric vehicle sales front. Mm-hmm. So, but we have one bullish analyst in the last 7 days for 2024. And so this is all going to be just fluctuating here as the market tries to figure itself out. They report earnings on May 7th. So we've got a little bit of time before they're going to report. But this is the unknown. The shares continue to slide, as we said, and now down 63% year to date alone. But maybe this is an opportunity. A lot, people don't like to buy after the big sell-off. They only want to buy after the big rally. Exactly. But it takes a stronger stomach to buy after the sell-off. But sometimes it's worth poking around and kind of seeing what the underlying business is actually doing. And right now we are poking around just generally at the earnings and the sales. And, these numbers look really good. But we'll see if they hold. I guess that's the key.
Yeah, very speculative. Absolutely.
Right. But as you mentioned, if you're on the younger side, you have time. Yeah. So you can do a little bit more of these speculative plays because you're not counting on it within the next 5 years necessarily.
And if anything, you throw it on the watch list, and once analysts start to raise the earnings revisions, maybe that's when you get in. Right.
Okay. Anything else I need to know about what Gen Z is looking at right now, or what they may be buying?
I think we covered a lot of good names.
I think we did too. But it is interesting to note what we have left out. That is mostly the old economy, but also energy that's out, and we never even breathed, any of the banks. That seemingly is probably out too. I don't know, but if they like dividend stocks, maybe that is their thing. I don't know. I'm gonna have to.
You mentioned Robinhood. They're dabble in financial services. I know they have a savings account, and you can open an IRA there. So some fintech.
Right. So you think that maybe some Gen Zers are still going into the buy what you know kind of categories? Wow, look at that Robinhood numbers. Sorry, I just pulled it up. Ticker is HOOD.
Yeah.
And 2024 earnings expected to be up 147%. But a lot of this, isn't this on the crypto ETFs launching? I think so. I think they gathered a lot of new users once the crypto ETFs launched. And so earnings have turned around. They lost 61 cents last year, but expected to make 29 cents this year and 38 cents next year.
Yeah,
and the estimates are higher.
I saw recently they were offering like a 3% bonus or something like that of your IRA if you switched your IRA over there, which could be a lot of money. I mean, depending how much you put in there. So they're committed to pulling people into their platform. And during the GameStop stuff, they got some pretty bad press, but it seems like people have short memory, and people like the product. It's got a great user interface, and it's probably the go-to broker for Gen Zers. It just is familiar. The whole platform feels very familiar for them. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of other brokers aren't. They're still, a lot of them are stuck in that early 2000s kind of vibe.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. And as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, this is the one that was already launched and out there when they got old enough to start investing, really. Yeah. And so this seems natural to them. It's not something that's new. Mm-hmm. And I put up the price and consensus chart. This is another 2021 IPO that did see better days. It's crashed down. As we all know, 2022 was a tough year for all of fintech, but it hasn't really rallied until now in 2024. Mm-hmm. And some of that is on the Bitcoin ETFs, I believe. And they have brought in a lot more business, and the earnings are starting to turn around. Mm-hmm. And you can see those lines way up at the top with the earnings now. Yep. It is showing the earnings growth there year over year. But analysts, this is not necessarily a chart you would run away from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just feels like they're in touch sort of with what's going on. I think they were the first to do no fees. And they've been keen on crypto, and they were one of the first ones to really advertise a savings account, a high yield savings account. And because I know a lot of people were like, oh, interest rates are high, my savings account should yield me something. And they were on it, and people were always, oh, should I get the Robinhood one? I'm like, sure. Seems reasonable.
Okay. So we'll keep an eye on Hood as well moving forward here. But, big sell-off and now nice rebound here in 2024. But the earnings picture is looking pretty good. I'm going to scroll up just a bit to see what the rank. It's a number 2 buy. So that's what I would expect, seeing those earnings estimates revised higher, either a 1 or a 2 on Robinhood. And before we end here, I do want to just see, when do they report earnings? May 8th is when they're reporting earnings, if you're interested in tuning in.
It's got a big ESP, earnings ESP too.
Yeah.
That's bigger.
Okay, so this was a good episode, and Gen Zers making a statement out there. I know I just saw not too long ago on Fidelity's data that Gen Zers are opening up many Roth IRAs now. I think last year it was like a 58% increase in female Gen Zers opening up Roth IRAs, and they're seeing a big jump in demand from GenZers across the board in the Roth IRAs. So that's good to see too. Word is getting out there about those great investment accounts, and you got to buy something in them. So hopefully it's some of these stocks. But let me recap the stock tickers again for those of you who didn't catch them the first time. We did talk about Microsoft, the old tech company, still with us, still popular. Microsoft is MSFT. Then we talked about Nvidia, maybe the stock of this generation. We won't really know for a number of years yet, but Nvidia, of course, is NV as in Victor, DA, NVDA. Sweetgreen, one of the hot restaurant stocks, at least of 2024. Sweetgreen is just S as in Sam, G as in George. Reddit, it's actually down almost 10% year to date, but it just went IPO. But could be one to watch out there on the social media side. R as in Robert, D as in Dave, D as in Dave, T as in Thomas, RDDT. Then we had the clean energy, nuclear energy provider, Constellation Energy, ticker C as in Charles, E as in Edward, G as in George, CEG. We talked about Rivian, which could be an interesting play as it's down so much. Ticker R as in Robert, I, V as in Victor, N as in Nancy, RIVN. And then we snuck in Robinhood there at the end because we had been talking about it all episode, and it's just Hood, ticker HOOD, HOOD for Robinhood. And as always, be sure to subscribe to get our podcast, just the regular podcast. You can get it on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're also on SoundCloud. You can get us anywhere you can get podcasts pretty much for the Market Edge, but be sure to get us. And I'll see you again next week with some more stocks.